All right. Well, welcome to our sixth class on Empowered Learning 101. We took a couple weeks off because both of us had a little bit of some personal issues going on. But we are recording this, and hopefully this is a class that is useful and empowering to all of our viewers as well. Today's session is going to be on keep on rolling, how to maintain that momentum and that motivation. We're going to talk a lot more about creating that environment for self-motivated students. We're going to discuss award systems that work, and then also expecting that school slump and what to do. We're probably hitting it about now because that's a very normal thing. And when I finally realized that that was a normal thing, it helps you actually get over the school slump. So I wanted to be sure that we pointed that out to people, that like, if you're feeling really sick of this, it's actually very normal feeling. So just hang in there. Let's see. Next, I'd like to just thank the Idaho Freedom Action group, the idahofreedomaction.org. They're sponsoring these free classes. There's nothing salesy here at all. All we may talk to you about is getting involved in government because it's really important to keep these freedoms to be able to educate our children the way that we want. But that's really the only salesy things that we do. They are definitely doing this as a service to everybody who is educating their children at home, either completely, partially, or even extra work that parents have to be doing because of all of our COVID restrictions. They've been a huge help in helping to get these classes out and get this information out to you. Just a quick introduction on myself. My name is Rebecca Bowman. I have been married to my sweetheart for 26 years. I have 4 great kids. Of my oldest, Nick, I actually began homeschooling him by accident as we were beginning a charter school. And then I just kept going with it. So here we are 16 years later, continuing to try to encourage families to do this thing, because it was actually schooling my children at home was the best thing I think I ever did for myself, for our family, and for our kids. I'm also a podcaster with the Luminous Mind. You can find, I've been posting these recordings there at theluminousmind.net. I've been putting them also on my YouTube channel, but then posting them there on the blog. I always try to keep it at the top so that you can go there and find recordings. Of course, living in Idaho, I love hiking. I love being outdoors. My husband and I are entrepreneurs and definitely learning enthusiasts because of what we learned from our children and this self-directed type of education. Let's see, my slide thing went away. Hold on. I love how it goes away here. All right. I don't know if we have anybody on the chat.
We have one person in the comments who said,
Awesome.
Thank you for doing these. So it's nice to know that we appreciate it. And feel free to drop in more comments as we go throughout the hour.
Well, and we really try to make these, we want to try to make these very customized for yourself. So if you like to, give us like your family dynamics, where you're located, what your family lifestyle and education looks like, maybe what your worries are, even your successes of how things are going with you. Because like I said, I like to try to make these customized. So definitely feel free to share with us. And then, as we move through these, we have like 28 courses that we're going to be doing, and this is number 6. So we have lots of time to address a lot of issues. But Dustin, would you like to introduce yourself? You're going to be moderating the chat for us. So
sure
people
thing.
should know who you are.
Absolutely. My name is Dustin Hurst. I am the Vice President of Idaho Freedom Action and Idaho Freedom Foundation here in Boise. I've been doing nonprofit work for about 10 years now, ever since I left college. Wow. I'm also going to be a podcaster. I'm launching my own podcast next month. It's called The Truth Hearst. Look for that out there. Awesome. I'm excited. It's going to be fun because it's going to be not Joe Rogan-ish in the sense that I'm not going to talk for 3 hours and interview, but we're going to interview some of the most fascinating people in Idaho's political sphere and Some other people who are big names in the liberty movement. For example, if you've read the Tuttle Twins books, we're going to talk to Connor Boyack. I hope to talk
Connor's
to
awesome.
Carrie McDonald, a couple other people. We've got some really cool shows. In fact, show one, I believe, is going to be Nate Shellman. So I can't wait to put him on the other side of the mic. Nate, if you don't know, he's the host of Idaho's #1 radio talk show in the entire state on 670
Awesome.
KBY. So that's gonna be fun. And then most importantly, I'm a dad, and my kids, we pulled our 2 kids out of their charter school this year for 2 reasons. Number one, we kind of anticipated what would happen with COVID, and we said, we want our kids to have a stable learning environment. So we're going to pull them out. We're going to do it ourselves. My wife is doing an excellent job of teaching them at home. But the other reason, and a lot of people might feel this way, and if you don't, that's fine too. But I don't believe that our charter school, their charter school, was teaching the values that we wanted to be taught. It was a little bit more progressive, and we'll stick with that word. It was a little bit more progressive than we preferred, and so we pulled them out. We got the good and the beautiful curriculum, and we're doing our thing. And it's so far
Awesome.
it's working out pretty well. But I'm definitely here. Like, I'm moderating the chat, but I am definitely here as a student. So I can't wait to learn. Especially this week. Overcoming slumps. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, we're going to talk some on that, but we're
Okay.
going to definitely be addressing those. And I think that's awesome that you're so supportive. I think many times I would get the question, like, how do I get my wife to homeschool? Obviously, you can't make your wife homeschool, but if you want to take an active role in it, I mean, even just helping to sponsor these classes, I feel like you're taking an active role in it for sure. And that's really what we want to focus on, is trying to build that family culture that helps us to be able to make this a little bit easier. So it's not just on one person, that we're doing it as a family, and that we're helping to empower our families as well as our children and ourselves, for sure. So I love that you're starting this adventure. It's great.
Yeah.
So last time we met, we actually talked about managing multiple students. And actually, we have everything loaded on our Facebook, not the Facebook page. I'm trying to think if I did put it on the Facebook page. I better check. We do have a Facebook page called Empowered Learning 101 that you can join. You can go to my website as well, thelumismind.net, and find recordings there, as well as information on upcoming sessions. But last time we talked about that, managing those multiple students, how the one-room schoolhouse got it right. And how we try to implement those ideas or ideals from the one-room schoolhouse. And then we also talked about helping your children set their individual goals, which encourages learning independence and mentoring among siblings. What learning with toddlers and babies is like, because that's a whole nother challenge.
It really
and
is.
then and then that family style learning. It's really funny how excited the toddler is to be part of all of this schooling, though. And I think that just helps set the stage. I've talked to so many parents that the longer they homeschool their children, especially the kids that never go to a traditional school, they never really have to be self-directed. Education just comes very naturally to them. So there's some positives by doing this long term, and that's what I found. That's why sometimes I'm like, I don't understand, because my kids never were in a system where they weren't having to be self-directed in that way. This session, though, we're going to talk about how to keep rolling, sustaining that momentum and motivation, like we talked about, as we began. I love to do these resource pages, and if you go to the Facebook page, Empowered Learning 101, and you join there, underneath all of the videos, I try to make sure that all of these resources are listed, because I really feel like it's really important for you to go and do your own study on a lot of the things that we talk about. I can say my experience and stuff, but sometimes it just helps you have better understanding and clarity. And a lot of the things that we discuss in these resource page, I just barely touch the surface. There's so much more you can learn from it if you continue to study these things. It's part of that whole deschooling process that we've talked about before in the past. The first thing on there is the 5 reasons why self-motivated learners win at life. That actually comes from Jack Canfield. Very positive, amazing stuff on that blog. Success for Underachievers by Love and Logic. This is actually an audio tape that you can get. I really love Love and Logic. It's such a powerful way to parent, in a way that puts the responsibility back on your children's shoulders, instead of being responsible and then having these power struggles. We're going to talk about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation during this discussion today, how to develop that intrinsic motivation. There's a lot of, I've got 3 different websites there for you to study intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We need both, definitely, but we want to foster that intrinsic motivation. And then today, I actually added this one today, Change Your Brain. It's a podcast. My 12-year-old son was so enthralled with this study, and it was a 2-hour audio thing that he listened to with me. But it's all from this neuroscience about scientists about how to change your brain. But he talks about those motivations and how to get ourselves to be a little bit more motivated. And then we're also going to talk about that homeschooling slump that we mentioned before, but just briefly. I just want you to know it's there for sure. But we're going to start here with the 5 reasons why self-motivated learners win at life. It's really important that we, at the beginning of all of this, we talked about that big why of why we're doing this. And I'm really hoping, like, through these courses that you're seeing, like, this should be our big why. Anything that helps to increase that motivation for your child is so important. And these come from Jack Canfield, and he says the first thing, self-motivated learners win at life because they want to, not because they think that they have to. You're also willing to admit that you don't know everything. That's a really important process. I think that's what bothers me most about the woke movement, is that the lack of humility, because to be a person who continues to thrive and to learn and to grow in any economy, you have to constantly have this humility about you. And that's one thing that you'll find people that are self-motivated are continually willing to learn from other people. You're willing to take big risks to get big results. That's one thing that I've noticed about my kids. Like, sometimes, like, the stuff they want to do scares the crap out of me, because we were always taught to be on the safe side. Like, when you're a traditionally public school, you want to play it safe. And I see my kids take these big risks that scare the crap out of me, but they can do that because of these self-motivated ways of learning. You're more likely to finish what you start. I always worried about that, because I would see my kids drift from things, because I talk a lot about how we want them to lead their education. Well, they'd get into something and then they wouldn't finish it, and then they'd move to something else and they wouldn't finish that. But the cool thing is the older they get, the more they learn that, because it's powered from within, the more they learn to finish what they want to start. And really, I think as a parent, if you want to teach anything, it's that, to finish it, to try to finish that, because there's just so much that you can learn in playing that out all the way to the end. And then you're always 2 steps ahead of the pack when you become a self-motivated learner. And we see this, like, entrepreneurs are always, and when you're an entrepreneur, you have to stay ahead of the pack in order to stay, I don't know, what's the word, Dustin?
Sharp. To be,
to be, like, innovative.
Yeah,
to continue to succeed at your business.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
And so these are some just some things, some reasons why self-motivated learning is so important. One of the things, I was listening to that podcast, and I didn't realize that it is really natural to sometimes have an underachiever as a child, a kid that you cannot get motivated. And he had, in that podcast that I was talking about, that I'll post the link, he had a lot of really great ideas about why people are like that. And a lot of it is expanding that focus. You know, some people have a hard time focusing on things. And so anything you can do to help our children expand that focus is really helpful, to have that success with underachievers. But I really love the quote from Charles Fay. He's the kind of the director of Love and Logic. He said, sometimes the thing that we try to help solve the problem actually makes it worse. So if we're always pushing, we're always striving for our kids to want to, you know, pick up the pace and to be that achiever, sometimes that can make it worse. And we often find parents and educators that want to use punishments or rewards to try to motivate kids. And sometimes that can create bigger problems with underachieving students. So we really want to think about that. And one of the reasons why that happens is because it violates that child's need for control. I love the fact I'm doing these classes with the Idaho Freedom Action, because I think, like, for the first time, it's with a group that understands the importance of freedom. And we want to extend those freedoms to our kids. And so we want to be sure that as we are, oh, here we go, as we are working with them, that we aren't violating that freedom of choice, for
And
sure.
I'll add
Go
to
ahead.
that. No, I think you raise a very good point, which is and I suffered from this. I don't know if everybody had the same experience, but I can only speak from what I know. I went to public school, and everything, I mean, there was the illusion of choice, which is, okay, you get to pick 8 classes, or you have to take 8 classes every year. Here are 5 that are required, and we have like 3 or 4 that you can pick from to fill out your schedule. There's your choice. That's not a choice. That's somebody
Yeah.
else saying, here's a box. You have to live within this box, but you can stand in that corner, this corner, or that corner.
Yeah.
And then immediately, like the day after graduation, we ask kids to make millions of choices and big, bold choices. They're not ready. So
Yeah.
that's exactly one reason, and you raise a good point. Like, that's why we want to encourage self-directed learning. Why we're doing these classes is because kids need to be ready to make big, bold, daring choices. I mean, even as young as possible. Not
Yeah.
even the minute they turn 18, but as young as possible. That leads to fulfilling life, not the other way.
Exactly. And I think we've talked about this in other sessions, that uh, there are colleges that are actually seeking out homeschooled students because they know those vital life skills that we talked about. They know how to adult, they know how to take care of themselves, they know how to make good decisions because they've been doing that throughout their schooling. And I'm not saying that all homeschooling families are like this, but
Yep.
that's why we do these classes, right? We're trying to encourage this. We don't want to create legalistic homeschooling situations. We want to create and expand freedom for the learners and for the family, and to create more joy in the process as well. So, and that happens with freedom, for sure. Let's talk about creating that environment for self-motivation. And this goes back to that, like, trying to remove the legalistic side, trying to take away the schoolishness of homeschooling. I love the quote I saw recently. We focus so much on the schooling part of homeschooling, but it's really the home part that we want to focus on. And that's really, I think, if you want to create an environment of self-motivation, you want to create an amazing family culture. The first thing we want to do is try to stay as positive as possible. If our kids feel loved and they feel happy and they feel heard, it's going to go a long ways for them to want to be more self-motivated. We want to be able to show empathy too. That goes with the feeling heard. We want our children to be able to come to us and with their problems or whatever, and know that we are going to feel for them and that we're going to be there with them, and we're not going to sit and tell them all the ways that they should have done this or they should have done that or they should have listened to you. We want to take a lot of little baby steps, and we don't realize that when we're creating this. At least I didn't, when we're trying to create this amazing family culture, that it's just tiny little steps. And a lot of times we feel like we're failing as parents, but we just have to like continue to move forward in these tiny little baby steps. We do want to offer some rewards. We definitely want to encourage students to learn, but we are going to go into that a little bit more because awards can cross on the line. That's why I've learned to hate grades, because a lot of times children will learn to do something for a reward, and we want to try to create kids that are doing it for that internal motivation. Go outside, change the venue. Don't think that school has to look, or learning has to look, the way that we all did it, growing up, is in a desk, with all, I look at these beautiful schoolrooms, and I had one, that every kid had their desk, and my kids loved it because they had their own little space and stuff like that. But it doesn't have to look that way. Try to change the venue and try to make it a more relaxed and fun experience for them. Review your progress, review progress with them. Empower your students as much as possible. Try to, put the learning on their shoulders as much as possible. If kids know you're worried about it, they're not going to be worried about it. And then try to work on that open communication. I think why we find homeschooling so hard is that we don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to have good relationships with people. And I think that's like the number one thing. That should be another part of your why, is to improve that communication with your whole family. Because I think that's, we've just lost that skill. I mean, our society shows that, but especially with our families, and then how we can work with little people and work with younger people. So the psychology today kind of explains this difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Of course, intrinsic is that mindset that is involved with doing something because you get some kind of personal reward out of it. If we think of it, we think of those things as enjoyment, and we have an eagerness to learn those new skills. Then we have extrinsic, and that's the mindset that somehow we're going to be rewarded for it. We think of it like getting a raise at work, like we want to work hard, so we get a raise at work, or losing weight from exercise, or by the way, Dustin, congratulations. I saw that you were like, and which is important. I mean, that's what we're saying. Intrinsic motivation it's an important part of being a motivated person, but we really want to encourage that intrinsic motivation, because the extrinsic motivation a lot of times won't bring the happiness, I guess, that we think it will, if we're always looking for that reward outside of doing something for the pure joy of it.
Can I add
Go
something
ahead.
right here?
Yeah, I'd
And this
love
is
to.
what Rebecca was referencing for future people watching this video is I'm actually down 48 pounds from my
That's a
high,
ton.
which is it is. Thank you for that.
That's good. That's awesome.
No, it is great. And what happened was, for a long time I was focused on. I used to be a very extrinsically motivated person because we can disagree on this, and we may, but like I was in like scouts and stuff when I was young. Scouts is a very extrinsically motivating program. I hated scouts. Like as I look back, like there was a lot of enjoyable experiences, but a lot of it was just like going through hoops to get the badges, right? To get your extrinsic. So finally, earlier this year, I just decided, like intrinsically, I said, I want something, which is I want to be able to keep up with my kids when I'm 10 years older or 15 years older. I want to be able to go on cool adventures with them. But like, dude, I'm way too fat for this, like way too fat. So I was like, okay, I did the research and I started like disciplining myself. And I think we talked about this before. Like, if you don't know what this is, but I reached for the second marshmallow instead of the first marshmallow. And not literally, because then I'd still be fat, but like I started reaching for bigger, more important goals that I wanted, and I'm halfway there. I want to lose 50 more pounds, and I think it's more, like you said, it's more meaningful, it's more joyful, because this is something like people can't take this from me anymore. With an extrinsic reward, it can be taken from you, it can be removed, it can be stripped, or people just forget about it. With this, it's like, this is me. This is me. This is my decision. I did this. No one can take it from me. So
Yeah.
I think this thing right here that we're dealing with, that we're talking about, might be one of the most important principles that we cover in this entire course. Because if you can get your kids to be intrinsically motivated, and for them to search for big important things that are meaningful to themselves, they can do amazing things. Now, that's not to say extrinsically motivated people can't, but my sense is that you create more powerful, empowered people
Yeah.
by helping them be intrinsically motivated.
Well, and I've talked to a number of my guests on my podcast about how a lot of what we're seeing now is because we were pushing extrinsic motivation. We were telling kids, if you go to college, if you do this, if you do follow this path, you're going to be on the path of success. Now we see all these young people that literally come out of college, they have hundreds of $1,000s worth of debt, and there's no pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. What has that done? It has made them angry, basically, that they, spent all these years doing things that they hated to get some kind of reward. And really, I think that's really the goal. I was thinking about it recently, having a son who's married and having another one that's moved out. Really, what I hope my children gain from this is that they are always looking to just be happy. Whether that includes going to college or not, whether that includes, but doing those things that make them happy. And we were talking about scouting. I definitely believe, I'm a huge scouter, by the way, but the thing I hated about scouting for so long is that there were people that were forced to be there that didn't want to be there. They were there because their parents kept saying, oh, to be successful, you got to be an Eagle Scout.
Yes.
They hated it. They absolutely hated it. And they made it miserable for everybody else around them. I think that's really important. Look at our world. How many of us are really happy anymore? And it's because we have been pushed and pushed and pushed to think that these extrinsic motivations are what we should be seeking. But a lot of that, like you said, with your weight loss, you're happier with it when it's your decision and it's something that you get to do and has some kind of effect. And like I said, it's important to have both of these, but we want to really push this intrinsic motivation. Definitely, for sure.
And I think there, and I don't mean to prolong this, but I think there are times in your life when you need to rely on one or the other. Mm-hmm. There are times like I've been working at Idaho Freedom Foundation for about 6 years. There have been times where it's absolutely sucked. Like I hated it so much just because the work was hard, stuff wasn't moving the way I wanted it to. I didn't know enough or whatever. But I was like, I had literally no intrinsic motivation. But then I looked at the outside. I was like, okay, well, I still need a paycheck. I still need a place to live. I still want this job. I want the nice office or whatever. Like, that's got to power me through. And it worked. I think there was about a year period where I did that, where it just didn't work very well. And now I've moved into the intrinsic where I get to do stuff I like. Things are a little bit better. Like, be okay with using one or the other, but know that intrinsic's probably, at least from my estimation, probably the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, in that podcast that we listened to today, he talked a lot about that. That's one thing, building that grit with kids. We all have to sometimes do stuff that we hate. We want to try to minimize that as much as possible to help with that intrinsic motivation. But there is something to be said. With every job that we ever have, even if it's our dream job, there are probably parts of it that aren't as fun as, and when you're first starting out,
Yep.
You have to do those things. My husband's, he's been trying to build this business and he's finally got to a place. He's like, okay, you know what? I hate this part. I'm going to, take that part out, but there's still other things on there that he hates as well.
Yep.
But because he loves the ultimate thing of what he's creating, he's willing to put up with it. And I think, like we said, it's important to have both, but we want to feed that intrinsic motivation for sure.
Absolutely.
Which brings me to that.
Oh, there we go.
That intrinsic motivation.
Nice transition there.
We want it driven by an interest or enjoyment in the task itself and exist within that individual rather than those external pressures. There's 3 points that I have down to help with this, to feed this intrinsic motivation. One is that we don't want to overdo it with external reinforcements. If you're trying to develop internal motivation, then you need to let go of giving external uh, reinforcements for everything. I actually, part of that podcast he was talking about, some of these little kids, they would love to draw, and they would just draw, and they would just draw, and they just draw, and they started getting stickers for every time they were drawing something. And then finally they stopped giving them stickers, and the kids stopped drawing. If your kid is already, or if you feel already intrinsically motivated um, to do a thing, trying to give them an external reinforcement actually can backfire on you. So we don't want our children to expect reward for every little thing, like allowance for one thing. I think it's important that we pay them for jobs, but there are jobs that they're expected to do that we don't get paid for. Because as a mom, there's a lot of jobs I do that I don't get paid for. And we want to, we don't want to push that external stuff so much that it squashes that internal motivation. So be very selective with what you want to reinforce, what kind of behavior you want to reinforce it. Good communication is really key here. I think it's really important to know your kids' loves before you start with that. Make the actual activity more interesting, fun, and enjoyable. If it doesn't feel like work to the student, including an experience sharing element to an activity, like if you're enjoying it, the chances are that your kid will be too. So if we can lighten up and we can make this fun and more exciting for them, and we don't take everything so seriously, that we're just having fun for doing whatever we're doing, and we're doing it together, that really helps to feed that internal motivation. Kids pick up a lot of cues from how they might feel about an activity from you. A lot of kids hate math because their parents talk about how horrible math is. So we want to be sure that we aren't doing something to squash that internal motivation. I'm one of the first people to admit I probably did that with my kids in a number of ways. So encourage, the number 3, encourage competent active roles. If you want children to participate and engage with you, you must develop their feelings of competency in doing so. Otherwise, why would you do that in the first place? So you can encourage this by providing clear roles for your children to do, and then scaffolds when they need that extra support. So just try to encourage competency for them as much as possible. I'm hoping that makes sense, but those are ways to feed it for sure. Let's talk about award systems that work. I kind of touched on this before. If they love it, don't use an external reward, because it can actually squash that internal motivation. You want to use as much positive emotions as possible. Prefaced with the fact that sometimes when we first start something, we kind of hate it. I have had situations where I've encouraged my kids, like, just hang in there just a little bit longer and see how you feel about it. If you don't like it by this time, then, but as much as possible, if you can encourage those positive emotions, that's helpful. Don't violate their choice, which I think, we don't want to create a reward system for something that they really don't want to do. If they're a little iffy on it, that's one thing, but if it's their strong opinions about it, don't violate their choice. Give them options as much as possible on award systems that they want, things they want to earn, ways that this would help them reach their goal better. Avoid punishments. That's one thing that just drives me crazy sometimes about the public school. I've had a couple of my kids, as they get to high school, they take classes here or there at the different schools. My daughter's in a charter school that we helped start, and sometimes they punish them, and it just infuriates me. They do things, and it doesn't help. It just makes the children angry. So try to avoid punishments for work that isn't done, or isn't done the way that you think it should be. Feed that intrinsic motivation, like we talked about. Work with their goals and their why. That's also really helpful. Like Dustin was saying, sometimes we're just expected, we expect kids to do these things, but if we can work with their goals and their whys, that really helps with, that's part of that internal motivation, I think, is that it's something that they're choosing to do, and that maybe you're creating a reward system to kind of help them reach their own goals, and try to make it as stress-free awards as possible. I'm not saying like give it away to them, but don't like make the goal so big that it seems impossible for your children to reach. Um, let's talk about motivation for different ages. Sometimes, like that one article talked about from that we have like really underachievers maybe of children. So we're trying to motivate them to want to learn, to want to branch out and do different things. With toddlers and grade schoolers, you really don't have to. They have such a natural curiosity, and that's really the sad part. We as homeschoolers don't want to squash that. They get that. We could get that in the traditional public school a lot of times. So we want to try to keep that natural curiosity flowing. Look for cues. If your child seems fatigued, don't push too hard. Don't push to finish the whole unit. Maybe you can say, okay, at the end of this worksheet, we can stop here. But don't push them so hard that it makes them hate it. That's one thing I was really grateful with my children on reading, is that I could take it slow and I could take it at their pace and with their own cues. And none of my children have hated reading because it wasn't forced on them. They didn't have to be at a certain level. We worked on their own timetable. With little kids, I did a family store, some of those quick incentives. And, if they did so many days or they got so much, I can't even remember how we did it, but I purchased a whole bunch of tiny little things and I had them high up on a shelf and they all had a little price tag on them. But with little kids in particularly, quick incentives work really well. They have a hard time, seeing the big goal, unless you can build a big poster or something, like you're going to do a movie night or something. And to get a movie night, they can mark off those places. That's also a really quick incentive. But like I said, work with your children on what would incentivize them for sure. Praise them when they show initiative. I think as parents, we don't do that enough. Our kids are looking for cues on our face all the time. I don't know what it is. Like it's something that they maybe something as their babies or whatever. They're always looking at the emotions on your face, and so we want to praise them as much as possible and show them that we are proud of them when they take initiative, and make failure okay. Provide a safe space. Toddlerhood, grade school time is not a time to critique. It's not a time to tell your children all the things that they did wrong. It's just a time to encourage them to continue to learn. I did a podcast with a guy, and he's the one who helped me see how horrible grades are sometimes, because a lot of times those extra little critiques can drive children to hate to draw. Most kids, when they're really little, they love art. Where are all our artists now? It's because they had too much critique through the years. Especially for those creative things. If we critique them too much, it can actually end up making them hurt or hate it. Sorry, my words are all getting jumbled, but they'll end up hating things if we critique them at too young of an age. Let's talk about middle schoolers. This is kind of a hard place. I think this is where a lot of kids kind of lose their motivation maybe. We want to be patient. We want to deschool them and ourselves maybe as much as possible. A lot of times we see our kids bouncing from one thing to another, and we're worried that they're not going to stick with anything. But this is really a time where children are exploring a lot, and they just need that space. They need that space to kind of explore and to kind of figure out who they are and what they like. But help them set their own goals and their own reward systems. When our kids are little, you can set an award system that they're like, oh, this is great. Going to the bathroom. I think of that. My kids would earn little Hot Wheels cards or whatever if they went to the bathroom. but when they get older, help them find reward systems that work for them. Keep those good lines of communication open. Is this working for you? Is this something that you still love? Ask them lots of questions about what they're doing, and try to have as much positive emotion about that as possible. Praise them for initiative that they show. When you see them like, wow, I'm so proud of you for jumping in there and getting that done all by yourself. You just really praise anytime you see them taking that initiative on their own. Show as much respect and trust, and give them as much ownership as possible. We have worked ourselves into a horrible place as parents where we feel like we have to control all of our children's time. And a lot of, I hear from parents, well, if I don't do this, my child won't. Let them flounder for a little bit. Show them that you trust them, that you respect them, and that you know that they're going to create good ownership with their time. My 12-year-old is really trying our patience right now because of that. He does a lot of video game playing. He does a lot of things that we're worried about, that he's not being very balanced. And so I'm speaking to myself on this as well. But we got to give them that ownership and show that trust and respect to them. Give them room to discover those interests in as many different kinds as possible. Like I said, if they're jumping from one thing to the other, that's okay, because they kind of have to figure out what they like and what they want to do. And only provide critique when they ask you, and be very light on the criticism. I think this is a time when they start to really like, oh, they're getting really good at something, but not quite have it down. But don't constantly be critiquing and criticizing them, because it'll make them hate it for sure. High schoolers, once again, to be patient. Yeah.
I'm not ready for this. Thankfully, I got about 5 years.
I have to tell you, from 15 to about 18, those are hard years.
The worst.
They have been for us, at least.
Right.
There's always something going on that we're like, oh my gosh, am I going to make it into this? A lot of that is because those neurons and are disconnecting all the time. So we call it hormonal and induced brain damage. And we laugh about it with our kids,
Seems about
and
right.
they know that, and I think that's important for them to know that, they have, a lot of, what's the word? Like, when your bodies are developing, and your emotions, and
there's just a lot going on, and you're trying to figure out the world. You're trying to figure out, you're trying to individuate and put space between yourself and your parents and become your own person. There's just there's a jumble of crap going on inside you.
And if you find a child that seems really rebellious, I would spend some time looking at yourself. Like, are you too nosy? Are you, because this is a natural time for children to kind of desire to push away and to feel like their own person. And so if you're getting a lot of that rebellion, really look at yourself and how you're approaching your children. Are you treating them like, oh, you're just a dumb teenager? Because they pick up on that, and then they will start to feel disrespected and not loved, and you'll see more of that rebellion too. Try to help them feel as much as an adult as possible. I think we keep our children too young for too long, and I found with each one of my kids, like, if they didn't feel like they were part of that adult world, and somehow they were doing something that they felt like they were somewhat contributing to the world, they started to have problems with anxiety or depression. I think if we see that grow in children, it's because they don't feel trusted, and they don't feel like they're making a valuable part in the world. They don't feel like, so I just feel like there's a lot we can do with the mental health by helping them come out into some kind of thing. This is my boys. They got really heavy into the explorer's post, and they would go work with the firemen, and, they would lose at cards to them. They would probably learn a few bad words. What's wrong? But it's something that they really loved because it helped them feel part of that adult world. They would go on calls with them and help with tiny little things and wash the trucks. And it was just something that really helped with their be part of that world. Listen to their goals and their natural talents. A lot of times we try to push what we think our children should be. The second boy, I always thought, you should be a engineer because he has such an engineering mind, and he was always doing something different than that. So just go with it. Just go with those goals that they have and that natural desire and their natural talents. Help them find mentors. I think this is really important. This is a time, like I said, that children are naturally pushing away, but you can help steer them towards good mentors. And then that also helps if you can find them good mentors. A lot of times they'll reinforce what their parents are telling them, and then they'll they're getting it from more places than just one. Show as much respect and trust, and give them that ownership again. And this is a time, if they're seeking critique, this is a time they're trying to perfect their skills. Help them find somebody in the community, an expert of some kind that can help them with that critique. Is really important, because you'll see kids, they'll get to a point, they know it's not as good as they want it to be. So when they're toddlers, they don't care, they think it's amazing, whatever. They can look around and go, oh, well, that's not as good as it should be. They know that for themselves, but to hear that from a parent sometimes is horrible. But as they grow, they get better and better at those skills. And so I just
can I add one?
Yeah.
Can I add one? Okay.
Love
so as somebody who has overseen a number of employees over the years, you have got to teach your kids how to accept feedback. You have to. There are so many kids who are, and I don't say this as a pejorative or derisively or whatever, there are so many kids who think that their first draft is perfect. And if they come out of school thinking that, they are going to fail, or they're going to suffer with crippling anxiety their whole life. You have to teach your kids to trust the process, and to respect the process, and to respect those who have gone before. I can't even tell you, I can't even count on two hands how many people I've edited. And by the way, I've been here myself on a few things. But how many papers I've edited where people think if I change things around or tell you to do it again or whatever, like, that's not because I hate you. It's not because I think you're crap. It's not because I think, whatever. It's because I don't see the best product on the paper. And I know that you're capable of more. But there are a lot of people who just can't wrap their minds around that they're, and by the way, this is an interpersonal thing too, because you have to understand that, like, I don't know how to explain this, but you have to put your trust in another individual, that they are willing to mirror you and to look at your work and evaluate it and build you up in a positive way. Not just I mean, so much is about tearing people down, on social media and stuff. Like, if I'm evaluating my employee or my report's work, I don't want to tear them down. I want to build them up because it makes my life easier. But so many people think, oh, if it's not top, if you don't give me 100% on my first try, then you hate me. I'm gonna quit. I don't like this. It's like, no, this is the process. You have got to teach your kids how to take feedback. It's absolutely critical.
Well, and I'll go back to that woke thing. A lot of it is a lack of humility. A lot of it's a lack of humility. Yep. And I think a very good natural way to do this without, because like you said, we don't want to just give our kids rewards like, this is awesome, you're so amazing, whatever, all the time.
That will ruin them too, by the way.
Yes. We want to encourage them to keep going and to keep trying. And, as they get older, they're like, well, I don't think this is very good. And I'm like, well, these are some things, yeah. And you'll continue, but keep working at it. As long as we can kind of keep that mindset. But I think it comes from humility. So one of the great ways that you can do that is you can show them something you're working on and how, you could think you can make it better. And so they always see that you're also trying to always perfect your craft. I think, like, when they see the humility in us, all of a sudden they go, oh, it's okay if I make mistakes. But that's one thing, I guess, like the traditional educational system is like, you have to be an A student. Yep. You have to be perfect all the time. You have to, a lot of fixed mindset. Like, yep, if I don't get it today, then I'm not going to get it tomorrow. We want to teach our children, and throughout these courses, we'll talk a lot about that growth mindset. And we need to change that as parents too. We need to change to a growth mindset, that we aren't perfect. And it's important, I think, like if you come to your kids and you've made a mistake, you've yelled at them about something, and you come and you apologize, it goes a long way to like showing that humility. And really, I think it comes down to that. Humility is the new smart, and if we don't change that, we are going
Yeah.
to lose our innovation in America, because
Um,
that's how we learn, or
abs-
how we improve.
Yeah, 100%
So
agree. I can't be more emphatic about this. If you want to, I mean, I've learned this in the workplace. If you want to learn it, and if some of our viewers want to learn, there's a book it's workplace focused, but it has lots of applicability to home. The book is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And it goes, there are 4 different quadrants that you could be in when relating to other people in the work life. There's the ruinous empathy, where you're way too empathetic and you don't hold people accountable for their stuff. And then there's like, you're the opposite of that, and you're just a beast, and you're not coming from a place of empathy, and you're just not recognizing their humanity. There's like this nice center spot where you can be right in the middle and just be understanding that people are human, but also hold them accountable so that they can be the best that they want to be. You're kind of helping them along their life journey. And that's a fantastic book. Radical Candor is probably one of my top 10
that's
books
awesome.
ever. So read that book.
I'll have to look that one up. Humility is the new smart. I interviewed one of the authors. That's another great
wow.
one
Yeah,
to
I
think
bet.
about. But and also, if you have set your own goals. I think if your kids always see you, like I said, working on yourself, that will help a lot. And that they know that you have weaknesses. I think that's part of it, is that we've been taught like fake it till you make it, but really don't fake it until you make it. In a way, like, be really honest and transparent with your kids.
Well, the
You're not
idea
perfect.
is, somebody said this one is, face it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
If you fake it
Yeah.
till you make it, you'll feel empty inside. But if you go through, again, trust the process, respect the process, and understand
Grit.
you
Yeah.
suck until you don't,
Yeah.
grit, then you will come out on top. But you've got to be patient, you've got to be humble, and you've got to accept that feedback and just keep going. If that's
Exactly.
what you really want, that's how it works.
Exactly. For sure. All right. Well, the next thing that we're going to talk about is that schooling slump.
Here we
And
go.
all I want to do is just actually, I guess, mention it. But
Dang it.
there's also some things that you can do to kind of get into that schooling slump. We shouldn't be surprised that we feel this way. Like I said, I would always get there and I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And then I'd hit it again. I'd actually hit it. It says in February. This comes from a quote from the Homeschool Connection. She says in February, I always hit the slump about in March, maybe, because it's just time. Like, you're just tired of the same old routine. You're tired of waking up early. You're tired of the schedule. You're tired of those things. So some ways to kind of overcome the slump is to try to change things up as much as possible. Um, Try to use holidays to your advantage. Sometimes I would push through stuff. If you start to feel like you need a break, then take a break. That's, I think, number 4 is take a break. Try to get your kids to work as independently as possible. That's okay. Like, if they get most of the worksheet done, that's fine, as long as they're doing it. Sometimes that was another thing with me, is like sitting there and trying to push it to the end, and trying to. Sometimes it's okay if they work independently, and give them the space to do that. Try to connect with other families. This is one of the travesties of COVID, but we need that connection. We are meant to connect with people. So try to reach out to other families, connect in the most, sane possible way. And it's okay to meet them at the park or something, or, find some place to meet other people and talk to them. Follow your child's lead. Sometimes if we're pushing and we're pushing and we're pushing, it makes it even more difficult to try to get to the end. But maybe your kid wants to, all of a sudden, has a new interest, and maybe this is a good time to do a unit study with them, instead of doing kind of that continue thing, and then you can pick up those other courses later. It's okay to try to follow that child's lead. Make time for home. One of the advantages of COVID is that we have all this time home. But if you find yourself being overscheduled, just start saying no to things. Like Dustin and I, we had to say no to this class for a couple weeks because we had stuff that we had to do. And so if you may have to say no to some things, and that's okay. Go outside as much as possible, even though it's getting cold here and it's starting to snow. I had to laugh though. Boise got snow before
Yeah.
Idaho Falls
Dang
did.
it. It's much to my chagrin because I always tease my mom about that. So yeah,
But your snow's probably gone,
most of
right?
it, yes.
Okay, and I said ours is still sticking, so
Yeah.
that's the downside. But try to get outside, get that fresh air. Take a walk every day. That's really important. We haven't had enough of this with COVID, and we need to be outside. Another thing to really help the school slump is to go help somebody, to serve somebody. Sometimes if we get into somebody else's business for a little while, when we come back to our own, it doesn't seem as bad. So volunteer and help people. Just try to get physical as much as possible. I know in Idaho, I always hit it, when it starts getting darker all the time, I just don't have the motivation. I don't know, I'm just tired of it. But if I can continue to get up, get exercise, get that physical thing in, that really helps with that as well. So just keep trying to push through some of those personal, cares of taking care of yourself. Um, a slump is a good time to reassess your why. It's a good time to look at your goals and to see what you might need to tweak. Is there something that would help you feel more motivated? Is there something that you have to pull out of your schedule to help you feel more motivated? There something like, I finally just have to clean this shelf, to feel more motivated? Really think about that. What will help you feel more motivated? Being able to take care of yourself as a parent is really important to teaching our children. I wanted to put this picture in here too. I found this as I was putting these slides together, but this is kind of what we're talking about with grit. So my oldest child actually hated the water. This was one of our first swimming lessons. And, as we started to move through that grit, he became a really great swimmer. So I thought those pictures are so funny because we see him hating the water, and then there he is. I think that's his junior year on the swim team. And so, just continue to, reassess that why you're doing that. People will never forget what you said, but they will forget. Let's see, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's why I'm always pushing that, like, what are the emotions in that? What is the emotions in your home? What is the emotions with that? I want your children to love you at the end of this and not like be wanting to get away from you. So just really always be thinking about that, like enjoying the moment for what it is. I love that mindfulness component. If we think about like, okay, let's look at this situation. I'm feeling a little bit stressed, and why is that? I think that's really important self-care for sure. Definitely this is the time to, we've been doing this for a couple of months now. This is a really important time for you to be your child's learning advocate. Things have changed a lot in our schooling situation. There are a lot of people homeschooling that didn't plan on this, which is okay. Sometimes not planning on it is how you get started. That's what happened with me for sure. But notice how your children learn best. Really focus on that. Journal as much as possible. It's really important for you to let your legislature know. If you're needing help financially, this is a great time to reach out to them and let them know what's happening with your children's schooling, and try to, I don't know, harness that as much as possible. Anything that we can do to expand freedom, I think, is helpful. Just help to be that change, to make sure that we open up these opportunities for other people.
Let me add to that very quickly, because this
Sure.
is, I will tell you, and again, we're recording this. People in the future are going to see it and know that we did the right thing. But it's November 20th, or excuse me, November 11th in 2020. The 2021 session is going to be a brawl, and school choice, education choice is going to be one of the top things. The field has been cleared because of the SCOTUS ruling earlier this year. Call your lawmakers. let them know that you demand education choice. The time is right, especially because we have COVID. But beyond that, if public schools just don't work for everybody, they just don't.
Mm-hmm.
So please, please call your lawmakers if you have questions. Reach out to the Idaho Freedom Foundation. We're here to help you and let you know what the options are. But this is a pivotal moment in Idaho history, and we can change the education game forever. There's my pitch. There you go.
And this isn't only about your children and your family. This is actually good for teachers too. Open up, give them as many opportunities to be their own negotiator, their own job negotiator, to be able to teach the way they want to, there's a lot of teachers that want to be teaching, that don't want all the mandates, that don't want, but if they don't have any other options, those are their options. And so, whatever we can do to expand the situation for everybody is a better situation, in my opinion, for children, for teachers, and for families. For
Absolutely.
all of those things. So.
Completely agree with you.
Well, thank you for joining the session. We were at an hour too. That's awesome.
We nailed it.
Do we have any questions though?
One person kind of scoffed at the idea that we should not punish kids because the world has consequences. I don't think that the world has consequences. I don't think those two things are in the same ballpark. But if you want to speak to that for a second, I think that'd be helpful.
Oh, sure. I'm not talking about not giving your children consequences for things, or not even encouraging them to do things that they don't love to do. I'm just not in the realm of continually forcing people to do things that they don't want to do. It kind of goes back to baseball, for instance. I had a friend that was telling me that his dad pushed and pushed and pushed for him to play baseball. And because he loved the game and all that, and the kid got really good at playing baseball, but as soon as he didn't have to do it, he didn't pick up another ball. Ever, because it was constantly pushed on him. I'm not saying there's never any consequences either. What I'm trying to advocate is that we have better communication with our children, that we reach them in ways that touch their hearts instead of make them angry, because that's just not a very good family life, for one. It doesn't, your ability to continue to do this, it just won't be there. You guys will hate each other by the time this is done. And that's really, I guess, what I'm encouraging is good family relationships. And that happens with good communication. That can be, you can handle negative situations, and you can handle attitudes and stuff like that in a lot of different ways. I don't know if that's speaking to that.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. I think when we think of punishments, people think, that we need to spank our kids or put them in their rooms or whatever. And I just don't, like, after reading Alfie Kohn's book about unconditional parenting, like, I just don't believe in that anymore. And I used to be that, like, well, I turned out okay. Well, no, I didn't. We all have scars and stuff emotionally from stuff like that. But, like, my sense is that if there are mistakes, you need to simulate natural consequences, for example, or let natural consequences flow. Exactly. Which is like we're working really hard to teach our kids to do their laundry. The other day, our daughter had no clean underwear. Sorry, figure it out. Yeah. Figure it out. I think that's the way. And it's also an opportunity to go on to that. Like, it's about teaching. We don't want our kids to fear us and to fear a consequence every time they make a mistake. If we do that, they won't talk to us when they're older, and they really need to talk to us.
Yeah. Maybe they were talking about that one here, like avoiding punishments.
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah. So that's not how are you trying to motivate your children to do this if you're going to punish them for that? Do you know what I mean? Like, if they don't get their schoolwork done, there is a natural consequence of, like, oh, well, you can't go play with your friends. I'm not saying, like, don't ever, that's a natural consequence for not doing that. That's not like I'm spanking you because you're not getting your homework done.
Right.
Like, or I'm yelling at you because I think you're a horrible person. I just
Yeah.
like avoid that situation. Like I don't let my son, he can't play on his Switch until he exercises, for instance, because I'm afraid he's going to sit there for 3 hours and never getting any exercise in. But that's not a punishment. That's a reward. Like, oh, you got this done. You got this list of things done. Now you can play on your Switch. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
And I think that the overall point of what we're saying here, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but my sense is be thoughtful, be present, and communicate with your kids.
yeah,
Open those lines of communication. And if there's a misunderstanding about why they do stuff, remember, they're kids. They're trying
yeah,
to come up in this world, and they're trying to make sense of so much information that we've done it, we take it for granted. Just be thoughtful, because so many times, and I've done this, it's just like you're so quick to want to end a stressful situation for you. Go to your room, or here's a spanking, or do
yeah.
500 push-ups. No,
Yeah.
that's not how the world works.
Well, and so I think one of the reasons why I was angry about the punishments, so my daughter, like I said, is in a charter school right now, and some of the kids weren't getting their homework done. So the whole class had to miss lunch so other kids could get their homework done. That, in my opinion, is a punishment, because my daughter went hungry for the rest of the day because other kids weren't getting their homework done. There's other ways that we can like help them to get that done versus punishment. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
I guess that's kind
That
of
makes
what
sense.
I was thinking. So I just want to
Okay.
make learning fun, make families love it,
Yep.
or make children want to learn. So that's it.
That works.
All right. So next week we'll be talking about managing those distractions, and trying to get that social network on board with the family learning. I think at this point we probably have a lot more family members on board than we ever have before, but we're still going to talk about that. And also mentoring your children by manage your own life. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Absolutely.
All
And
right.
before we close today, I want to give a little pitch for something I'm doing. The legislative process. We're transitioning at IFF and IFA to a more educational institution. We always have been, but I want to put rocket boosters on it. The legislative process is very tricky. As somebody who's been studying it and watching it for years, there's still things I don't know about it. So we want to demystify it a little bit for people in our audience, because it's really, really important. The left is very good about teaching their people how to game the system and explore, use all the procedural perks and stuff to their advantage. So if you're interested in joining and learning about the legislative process, a soon-to-be former state legislator from Idaho Falls, Brian Zollinger, and I are going to hold a training on this
Awesome.
January 7th called Idaho Legislature 101. And it's about, again, how to understanding the Capitol, how bills are made, how rules are made, how to advocate for freedom and stuff with your lawmakers. For example, like I've seen people who just go up to the podium or dice, whatever you call that thing, the rostrum, whatever the name of it. They go to the speaker and they just bang on the podium thing, and they just say, my rights, my rights. Well, that's not going to win you many friends, folks. It's just not. You might be right technically, but it's just not going to work. So January 7th.
Once again, good communication.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. January 7th, Idaho Legislature 101 with me and Brian Zollinger. Totally free training. We're not going to sell you anything. We're just going to teach you, because we want to equip freedom-minded people to do the right thing and to advocate for freedom. We want you to be ready and willing and just raring to go. So please join us there, idahofreedom.org, to sign up, and the registration page is just on the banner on our website. So please.
And when are
please.
the classes going to be?
We're just doing one class on January 7th. Yep. And
January
if we need to do more, we will, because that's an hour. That's a lot to pack in there. But this is really important. We've got to understand this stuff. Our side needs to work on this. This is where we're a little weak. So
That's
please
awesome.
join us.
Great. Yeah, and just check out our Facebook page, Empowered Learning 101.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Well, let
Okay.
me stop streaming, and we will call it a night. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.